Hello, this is Tony Hiller from RealClimateScience.com. President Joe Biden says white supremacists are the biggest threat to America.
Our own intelligence agencies in the United States of America have determined that domestic terrorism rooted in white supremacy is the greatest terrorist threat to our homeland today. White supremacists will not have the last word, and this venom and violence cannot be the story of our time.
Those would be the same intelligence agencies which paid for Russian disinformation in an attempt to corrupt the 2016 election and get the Democrat elected. And those would be the same intelligence officials which lied about Hunter Biden's laptop in order to get Joe Biden elected in 2020. And now we have proof of white supremacists in America on the island of Martha's Vineyard. They said that all immigrants are welcome on their island. And they said that rejecting immigrants was hatred. But when 50 immigrants arrived, the sanctuary state of Massachusetts called in the National Guard to evict them. The very progressive white liberals of Martha's Vineyard said they didn't have room for 50 immigrants.
We have, at some point in time, they have to move from here to somewhere else, right? We don't have the services to take care of 50 immigrants, and we certainly don't have housing. We're in a housing crisis as we are on this island, and so we can't house everyone here that lives here and works here. We don't have housing for 50 more people.
They said that evicting the immigrants was putting resources and volunteers together to solve a situation there was no notice of. These are the same white progressive liberals which approve of Joe Biden sending tens of thousands of undocumented immigrants secretly into Arizona, Texas, and Florida. They say that they stand with immigrants and all are welcome here, but what they mean by here is in Republican states in the South, not in their progressive community of Martha's Vineyard. Every 4 years right before the presidential election, white liberals like to run around screaming Black Lives Matter. You can see this in Google Trends from 2016 and 2020. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio painted a Black Lives Matter street mural outside of Trump Tower in Manhattan. And shortly thereafter, the mayor banned the vast majority of black people in New York City from public life in New York, including restaurants. Only 28% of black New Yorkers were fully vaccinated. They said that unvaccinated people were a health threat and were not allowed in their restaurants. But these same Democrats have no problem sending tens of thousands of undocumented and likely unvaccinated immigrants to southern Republican states. It would appear that there's some rather large inconsistencies in the behavior of progressive Democrats. To be fair, though, Martha's Vineyard does have some black residents, like the Obama family, who own an estate worth $19 million on 29 acres with 7 bedrooms and 8.5 bathrooms. The Obamas could easily house the 50 immigrants who arrived on the island. The island promised that immigrants were welcome there, but when the immigrants arrived, they called in the National Guard to get rid of them. Projecting the ugly behavior of his party, Joe Biden says Republicans are playing politics with human beings, using them as props. The Democratic Party was created in the 19th century by slaveholder Andrew Jackson in order to protect slavery. And it appears that not much has changed since then. 55 years ago, Malcolm X explained how this works.
Going under the label of liberals. That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox. And a fox is always more dangerous in the forest than the wolf. You can see the wolf coming. You know what he's up to. But the fox will fool you. He comes at you with his mouth shaped in such a way that even though you see his teeth, you think he's smiling. You take him for a friend.
President Joe Biden said, what they're doing is simply wrong. It's un-American, it's reckless. And this is exactly the sort of dishonest, deceitful behavior which Malcolm X described 55 years ago. One thing has changed, though. As their vile behavior is becoming obvious to everyone, Democrats aren't smiling much anymore. Toto has spent much of his life living among hypocritical white progressives in communities like Boulder, Colorado. But I think his favorite time was in 2015, when we were the only white people living in an apartment on the edge of the forest in Columbia, Maryland. Almost everybody living in those apartments was black or Asian. In 2 years living there, I never heard one person mention the white liberal religion of global warming. People living there were very busy taking care of their lives and their families. They had no time to focus on the imaginary problems which rich white progressives create in their minds. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on the dishonest, neurotic belief systems of white progressives for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Kyrie Caesar, Toki and Upala on the web at realclimatescience.com.